The ECOWAS is not a democratic institution, as she claims. Why is the ECOWAS finding it impossible to be democratic, as it is possible for the European Union to be democratic? All the ECOWAS has to do to be democratic is to do exactly what the EU has just done. Why is it then impossible to do exactly what someone has already done? Stupidity is the only reason why 400 million people of ECOWAS cannot do what 600 million people of the European Union have just done. I, Kofi Ali Abdul-Yekin, can say on authority that the ECOWAS Economic Community of West African State, which is the regional body, is not a democratic body, and therefore lack the democratic legitimacy of claiming the responsibility of enforcing democratic value in any part of West Africa. Such mandate is only in the electorates of West Africa, and it is only from the people of West Africa that the ECOWAS as a body can get this democratic legitimacy. So as long as the ECOWAS as a body fails to meet this basic tenet of democracy, the claim by the ECOWAS is resorting to the use of force in upholding any democratic value is an autocratic act and therefore illegal. Democracy is best expressed in a simple mathematical term as a formula based on basic principle and clear methodology. Those failing to understand these basic principles find themselves crying the equation is wrong because the answers they get are wrong. We have people crying democracy is failing them in West Africa and want to replace it with something else, when what is failing them is the failure to understand the principles behind democracy. The failure of understanding the basic principles of democracy actually result in autocracy. Please permit me to use simple mathematics to explain what I'm trying to tell you. Let us use quadratic equation, which is expressed as ax squared plus bx minus c is equal to 0. That is simple quadratic equation. It's a formula that stands on its own. That is it. If you want to do quadratic equation, you must follow this basic principle of ax squared plus bx minus c is equal to 0. We always say the c is constant. If ax is the head of or heads of states and government of a political body, then bx is the judiciary arm of this same political body, and C is the legislative arm of that political body. In accordance with the principles of quadratic equation, the constant C must be constant if the answer must be 0, in line with the principles, again, of quadratic equation. Anything that does not meet this fundamental principle of quadratic equation cannot be said to be a quadratic equation, but something else. These core principles of democracy at the level of the ECOWAS is operating with a non-legislative arm, making the body an advisory body, which is not a legislative body, critical to democratic principles, and therefore undemocratic in its legitimacy to uphold or engage in the enforcement of any rule of democratic law by the use of force. At best, the democratic role of the ECOWAS as it is now is to advise any of the member states and leave the state to decide for herself what she wants. Yes, the principles setting up a democratic ECOWAS as a body is to have a composition of all the 50 member countries individually being democratic, and the ECOWAS itself as a body being democratic. It is inevitable to have almost every one of the member countries of the ECOWAS and the ECOWAS as a body to start the democratic process at the same time. Sometimes it's impossible. Until very recently, every one of the 15 of the constituent countries of the ECOWAS transitioned from military rule to a democratic rule for the rule of law of these countries to be legitimate democratic rules. Instead of the ECOWAS as a regional body itself to ultimately engage in a democratic ECOWAS, whose rule of law is legally democratic, rather, the ECOWAS has chosen to have her regional institutions operating an advisory rule, thereby leaving the member countries to their own devices. Some go out and sign contract, and ECOWAS is helpless. Some bring military rule, less from outside the ECOWAS to come and protect them, and here they protect their own interests. Some even have their own head of states being protected by foreign forces on the land, which means they don't even believe in their own citizens. If you cannot protect your own leaders, your own democratic leaders in particular, then who? They will never work for you. They will work for those who are protecting them. And that is what is happening. The ECOWAS seems to be scared of having its parliamentarians democratically elected directly, and instead opt for the selection of a few cronies pretending to be the ECOWAS legislatures, who the majority of West Africans do not recognize as ECOWAS MPs. They have no legitimacy. It is baffling to hear these so-called ECOWAS MPs selected from their respective national parliaments, where we know how most of them get into those offices, boasting of themselves as legislators of the regional body. I have on several occasions found myself being confronted by those agitating for a directly elected ECOWAS democratic legislators, asking me which of these so-called ECOWAS MP can honestly say that they campaign to the electorate as a precondition for the mandate to assume a role as legislative members of the ECOWAS Parliament? None. They campaign about other things to go to the parliament of their country. And we have these ambassadors, we don't even know what they do. We don't know them. These concerned stakeholders of the ECOWAS, as citizens, ask me, because they have no one to ask, for which of the 120 impersonators can tell West Africans that their opinion hold any water in the lawmaking process of the regional body, which is ECOWAS, rather than being mere rubber stamps, worse than the members of House of Lords in Britain, even worse than the Chinese communist members. And the worst is, I agree that every one of the 120 ECOWAS MPs will concede that they are more useful in the parliaments of their own country in the process of lawmaking than in the ECOWAS parliament. It is even on record that some of the ECOWAS MP to whom the word dignity means something have stopped attending the so-called ECOWAS parliament. They don't go there. They do something else. Sometimes they go on holiday because it's hopeless. By its nature, the principles by which the ECOWAS is currently meant to relate with its constituent nations is an advisory rule. In such capacity, the advice of the ECOWAS authority to the member state is subject to the will of the states concerned. As such advice lack legislative weight to force the party concerned into compliance. The sad reality today is, since the ECOWAS itself has chosen to be undemocratic and rather turn itself into an autocratic bully over the member state to be democratic by force, the question of whose interest the ECOWAS is serving constantly crosses the mind. The ECOWAS has seriously lost its own sense of purpose and become so arrogant to the point of getting irritated by the idea of being democratic itself. Like it is obtainable across the world, where the United States of America autocratically camouflage under the advisory rule of the United Nations law into forcing and bullying member countries of the United Nations to live by the democratic rule of the United States of America to the advantage of the Americans and their allies. The vacuum in the legislative arm of the ECOWAS is making it impossible, or it's making it possible for the United States of America and allies to take advantage of West African countries and ECOWAS nationals. So, in line with the current state of the ECOWAS, any claim by the ECOWAS as a body to dare into the enforcement of democratic value in any of the 15 states of the body is democratically unlawful and illegal. The challenge of the ECOWAS lies in the failure of the ECOWAS project to be completed as the founding fathers intended. Since a democratic ECOWAS legislative arm based on universal adult suffrage is fundamental to a functional ECOWAS, it is up to the lawfully marginalized West Africans to stand up against this apartheid version of a democratic ECOWAS. That is not democracy. It's apartheid. Apartheid on a regional level, working for others. The only medium of lawfully liberating ourselves from this lawful institutionalization of subjugation in West Africa by the neo-colonizers, the imperialists, and their West African collaborators who are looking like donkeys in suits and turbans, is only by a democratically elected parliamentarians directly by the ECOWAS citizens on the basis of universal adult suffrage. If this has worked for the Americans, and now the European Union in Europe, or now the Europeans in the EU, it shall surely work for us West Africans. So, as we are up in arms at the ECOWAS to back off from its unlawful act of attacking our fellow West Africans in Niger, who have decided to take their destiny into their own hands, it is important we understand that our right to self-determination against lawful institutionalization of this subjugation, the lawful institutionalization of illegality, the lawful institutionalization of injustice, can only be attained by a lawful institutionalized approach. Our right to self-determination in West Africa is rightly in our own hands. Independence is given as part of self-determination for those who demand for it. But anything beyond independence, like sovereignty, is up to us. It's up to you. It's up to every West African. One man or woman, one vote. Nothing more, nothing less. If you have been with me this far, surely you might have been inspired enough to empathize with our concerns, even if you happen to be on the other side of the fence. All the same, go on to like, share, and remember to subscribe to our channel so that anytime we publish such inspirational videos, you will instantly be notified. Above all, I wouldn't leave you without talking about this very important book, very, very important book. It's called The Secret of Great Nations. Sovereignty. Like I said in the broadcast, the only thing that is stopping us from being what we want to be is ourselves. Nobody in West Africa, 400 million people plus, nobody will stop us from being what we want to be. Only if we know what we want to be. This book can go a long way in opening your eyes to a lot of these things. I can say a lot. It's taken me 3-4 years to finish a book. Book 2 is on its way. In fact, remind me, or let's remind ourselves that Britain is democratic, United Kingdom is autocratic. Get that straight into your head. Britain is democratic, United Kingdom is autocratic. The question then is, what is Britain and what is United Kingdom? Then you can even ask yourself, what is Commonwealth? Can you see? What is Commonwealth? What is United Kingdom? What is Britain? Actually, these are issues book 2 of this book has been elaborating on, as we, promise you sooner or later this book will be in your hand. But please, and please, once again, don't forget, go and get yourself a copy. While my humble self, Kofi Ali Abdul-Yekin, I want to say, remember again to subscribe, like, and share. That is very important because it goes a long, long way. It's just a reminder. I know most of you are doing that. I want to say thank you for being with us. Have a wonderful day.